Is it this or this?
In a speech at MIT in 1994, Hasriman remarked that in encounters between people and cultures, much depends on the path that each has taken to that point. As human beings, we are shaped by the infinite amount of encounters we experience from the time we're born to the time we die, whether that be new people, new ideas, or new environments. The Aga Khan has also spoken about the necessity of investing time, knowledge, and money into the next generation. After all, they are the future. So where do these impressionable young children encounter the most new things, the most new ideas? School. We need to take a look at the current education system and resolve some of the issues which are restricting the futures of the children. So how did we get here? What motivates education? The Seljuk Empire set up a madrasa, or place of learning, called the Nizamiya Madrasa. And this was a subject of controversy because although some considered it to be a place made to benefit young minds, others looked at it as a place to propagate a certain mindset or a form of propaganda. What motivates our current education system? Horace Mann, an early 19th century politician, is credited with the creation of the public education system. He created it based on competition and equality of opportunity, and created it more around the group focus and left the individual to dry. In this way, those with conventional intelligence excelled, while those talented in other ways were left behind. In this way, man's system was created to produce factory workers through its teachings of respect for authority and punctuality. But is that what we really want in 21st century learners? So what's wrong with the current education system? In order to determine that, we first need to look at what the ultimate goal of education is. Some might say it's to prepare children for the future. Some might say it's to set them up for success. Some might even say that it's to discover their hidden talents. But unfortunately, these things are not what's happening at enough schools today. So, what's actually happening? If we take a look at the slide behind, we can have a more in-depth look. In his talk, Changing Education Paradigm, Sir Ken Robinson made some interesting points about comparing schools to factories. He said that we have a system of education that is modeled on the interest of industrialism and in the image of it, and compared schools to factory lines with their ringing bells and their separate institutions for specific subjects and their different facilities, and the way they group the children based on date of manufacture, and the way they have standardized tests, even though people have different interests and passions and talents, how they're all judged by the same standard. In this type of education system, kids are shutting down their imaginations and they're memorizing their textbooks and regurgitating the information on tests. And in order to get into the prestigious universities and follow the classic path of getting a high-paying job as the external pressure from their parents or the other people in their community. And I say this is unhealthy. They should follow that which makes them happy, that which they're passionate about. And I think this whole situation can be summed up by my school's motto: building fine young men one boy at a time. And when I heard this, I just instantly thought of a conveyor belt line, of some sort of system where robots are being created and information is being input into them. And they're just sent to this university to go get a job, and that's the way it is. But I just don't understand how people can be just created like that. And this is not the first time the metaphor of schools as factories has come up. Even in the earliest 20th century, Professor Elwood Cubberley of Stanford University said that our schools, in a sense, are factories in which raw products are to be shaped and fashioned into products to meet the various demands of life. So then, if this comparison is so strange, why is it stuck? I say because it's accurate. But is there an alternative? Over the course of history, it's become clear through the madrasas and the libraries and the gardens that education is a deeply held value in Muslim society. We often hear the following hadith: seek knowledge, if even in China, for the seeking of knowledge is incumbent upon every Muslim, by Prophet Muhammad. For me, this means not only to travel far and wide to learn new things, but also to experiment with different types of learning, learn everywhere, learn creatively. In grade 8, I was in my math class, and I was learning what was probably not the most interesting of topics, surface area. But I was having a bit of trouble concentrating and focusing on the teacher's lectures. After all, I wasn't interested in this topic. And then the teacher introduced a project. We were to create a program, a playground, using a 3D program called GeoGebra, using materials, and we had a certain budget, and each material costed a certain amount per square meter. So we had to make the most interesting playground we could with our current budget. And through this topic, through this project, I actually gained an immense amount of interest for the topic. I actually learned the topic much better than I would have if I had just heard more and more lectures. And my point here is not that school is inherently bad and flawed and we need to get rid of it. It's that we need to change the way we think about it. We need to experiment with projects instead of tests, with activity-based learning instead of just theory. We need to try problem solving instead of formulaic application. The bottom line is, people learn differently and there needs to be options. According to Einstein, everyone is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing it was stupid. A lot of kids fall behind in school not because of a lack of intelligence, but a lack of ability to keep up because of the structure of the current system. But the idea of unconventional learning isn't new. Royal women in the Mughal Empire received education in court through the learning of embroidery, astronomy, mathematics, mystical thought, and much more in a very well-rounded education. In 2007, while giving a speech in Kenya, His Highness the Aga Khan remarked that we sometimes give too little attention to the schools which prepare young children for life itself, in all its holistic dimensions. And yet the evidence accumulates steadily, showing that investment made in the earliest preschool years can bring enormous dividends as a child proceeds from one level of education to another. One example of a system like this is the madrasa, place of learning system, which takes place in East Africa and has been doing so since the 1980s with the support of the AKDN, that being the Aga Khan Development Network. In this school, the children learn music, reading, writing, they learn to play, they learn to cook, they learn to interact with other children. And they touch upon many of the essential skills that are missed in the Western world, such as interpersonal communication and culinary skills, which will undoubtedly be extremely useful in their future lives. Another example, slightly closer to home, is the tinkering school in San Francisco, where children are allowed to build whatever they choose, and they're given the time, the materials, the technology, the equipment, everything they need in order to accomplish this goal. And they're trusted not to hurt themselves or others, and through this, they gain an understanding of how to make things, how to learn from failure, how to come up with solutions under pressure, and celebrating learning as a whole. Success is trying. There are no tests in this facility. These kids will be future engineers. So, what can we learn from these examples? Firstly, we need creative solutions in order to approach new challenges. There are many, many problems and phenomena in the world which can't be solved or explained through traditional methods. We need to come up with new ways of thinking and ways of learning if we're going to be able to tackle such pressing issues such as climate change. Secondly, redefining success, genuine happy adults. Through a more creative-based learning approach, I believe that children would begin to uncover their hidden talents and passions at a younger age, and in doing so, they would likely become more inclined to follow what makes them happy rather than rich in the future. And lastly, everyone has something unique to contribute. Even those who are considered dumb at a very young age because they didn't learn the same way, or dropped out of school because they couldn't compete, would become more and more successful as they realize their talents. In conclusion, I'd like to leave you with a few words from His Highness the Aga Khan when he spoke about the type of education that he wanted to see in his Aga Khan University. Educating future leaders is a responsibility. To do it well, we must look beyond the world which is passing from sight and turn our eyes to the uncharted world of the future, with what I would call the 3 A's of modern learning: the spirit of anticipation, adaptation, and adventure. These will happen best in the learning environments which are serious and focused on one hand, but which are also joyous and inspiring places, operating on the cutting edge of pedagogy and knowledge. Thank you.